So welcome back to another edition. We have Moira Somers with us again. And we talked about procrastination in our last episode. So I thought it would be fun this time to talk about dark stuff. So Moira does a lot of work with family businesses. And we kind of touched on that just a titch last time. Is that's how you got started in getting curious about the financial aspect of what's going on emotionally with people. And I also had said, well, wouldn't you expect somebody in business to understand money? And I have a money script that says if you have money, you don't have estate issues, you've taken care of your taxes, you have good support around you, you're laughing. and I think I just recently did a column on, I think Aretha Franklin, died with 2 handwritten wills and all the consternation in her estate. And that money script kind of went right out the window.
Yeah.
So that it's different, I think, from earning money, having the capacity to earn money and to take care of your personal money. And you mentioned communication, which is often lacking in these families. And I think of Dick Wagner's one of his famous money truisms that talking about money is taboo.
For sure.
So, and sometimes that's confusing. When we talk about money, we see money, we read about money every day, but it's talking about our personal money that's so taboo, even within a family, even within a family business. So, yeah, tell me more about what you see there, what you deal with.
Every day I see bright spots. I see people doing this right, and I see the desire to do it right. I think there have been enough stories about, the Aretha Franklin kind of scenarios that people really don't want to do that. But what gets in the way? It's the same stuff we talked about last episode, that there's always competing demands on your time and your energy and money. And if you are involved in running your own company, let me tell you, you could be cloned 1,000 times over and still feel like there's stuff you're not getting to. So the ability to, I'm going to see if I can find this book on my bookshelf. I can't right at the moment, but the notion that if you're a business owner, you're sort of wearing 3 hats. There's the visionary, the E-Myth. That's what it's called.
Right, exactly.
There's the visionary, and then there's the business manager, and then there's the sort of what do you want to call it? The technical specialist. So whatever it is, whether your specialty is the law or your specialty is making widgets or doing this engineering process better. And so what drives most people into business is that they've got this skill. Maybe they're a hairdresser, or they've got a desire to make cosmetics, and they want to do it their way. And so they start out with just, I want to have the freedom to develop this system, this process to meet clients the way I want to. And for many of them who become very wealthy through that process, the wealth was almost a byproduct.
Yeah, exactly.
And certainly the great wealth came as a surprise for many, many of the people that I work with. And sometimes it's a surprise just because it came so early. Sometimes it's a surprise because it just kind of grew like Topsy, like it just turned around and, oh my gosh, we got this amazing contract, or we hooked up with this partner, and things turned out much better. And so sometimes, Rick, it's a matter of nothing has prepared you for dealing with this. You know, I sometimes it's like telling somebody you like hamburger and you look out on your lawn one day and there's a herd of cattle out there. It's like, oh, I know I like beef, but I don't know what to do with cow. And so the challenge as a business owner is being able to sort of move from this finger on the pulse of every nickel that's coming in and out of the business to learning how to trust advisors who can tell you about how to safeguard yourself tax-wise, jurisdictionally, what are the implications of going into this new country, estate-wise, wealth transfer-wise. And so there's this whole other set of skills that you have to layer on when you're a business owner that most people never have to learn about. You just, as long as you file your personal income tax on time, if you're an employee, you're good. And then you've got to do that other stuff like make sure that you spend less than you earn and put some aside for retirement, figure out where you want to go. They've got to do all the skills of middle class life, plus these skills of wealth. And those are just a little bit different, right? Like learning how to trust advisors and learning how to talk about the meaning of the money and what it is, because money is a life-shaping circumstance for all of us. If we grew up poor, that shaped us. If we grew up with sufficient, that shaped us. Sometimes quite literally, right? Like how your teeth look today may be a function of the money that was in your family when you were a youngster. And if there's a lot of wealth, there's just a lot more to take care of. And so families need to learn what to do, not only for the tasks that are in front of them, but for how it is that they're preparing their kids to deal with this. Because if you are a prominent family, and I grew up in a small town, I think you're in a fairly small town. Every town has got its version of the royalty, of the royal family.
Right.
And often they're the royal family. That prominence comes because of their wealth, because of their success in business. So if you've got that last name, you get attention for that. And you may not, parents need to be really clear about talking to their kids about, do you ever get any comments about our last name? Do you ever get any requests for money? I was working with a private school recently, and they were really concerned because it turned out they started becoming aware that kids in, I think it was the grade 3 or the grade 4 classroom, they'd got together and they'd figured out who were the wealthiest, like top to bottom, what was the net worth of every family in that class. And then it's not that, that's a little weird, but it's all available on the internet, or they thought it was anyway. They could figure it out. But then they just started realizing that the kids were treating each other differently based on where they fell on that list.
Wow.
Right? It was a really icky dynamic that
wow.
And so what needed to happen at the school, but also what needed to happen at the level of the families, was that you start having these conversations about under what circumstances, in what condition is money important, and in what conditions is money not important at all. And in fact, if you allow it to become important, you're really messing up if you bring it into that domain. And so that's what the most kind of, I don't just want to say financially successful families. I want to talk about, that's what families who are interested in preparing the next gen for independent and interdependent life, they actually spend time noodling on these things, no matter what the level of net worth in the family. They talk about how everybody's expected to make a contribution.
That's a whole topic in itself, isn't it? Intergenerational wealth.
Yeah.
One question you had just really struck me is, what questions are you asked about your last name? I'm like, wow. And I immediately flashed to my last name in my community. Now, were you raised in Winnipeg?
No, I was raised in a small town in Ontario.
Okay, I just want to make sure you weren't calling Winnipeg a small town.
No, sir. This is the big shining lights.
Because compared to Rapid City, it is the big city. And my name was splashed all over the city because my father owned a real estate firm.
Mm.
So there were signs everywhere. Kaler, 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 Kaler. And it was somewhat the opposite projection. And he had a management firm that managed property. So 1,000 people in the town are writing their rental checks out to Kaler.
Mm-hmm.
So the projection that I was used to was, my God, you own the town.
Mm.
Wow. We see your name everywhere. It's all real estate. Mm-hmm. I rent from you. You own the place. Mm-hmm. And we were the middle class. So,
mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean, these projections are just that, right? They're projections. They may not be related to anything other than what's going on in the mind. But if it's coming at an 8-year-old, if it's coming at a 10-year-old, here's another story. Somebody from a very wealthy family was sitting in a coffee shop one day, and he was like 20 years old, and he heard his last name being mentioned. So of course his ears perked up, and these complete strangers to him were talking about his family, and they said, yeah, the dad and the uncles and the aunts, they're okay, but I hear the kids are just like losers. They're not amounting to anything.
Wow.
And this just hit him at such a vulnerable stage in his own development, where he was just, I think he was having a really hard time at school, at university. And it just, it went into this channel of, I'll never amount to anything,
Wow.
And so I guess my point is that it really behooves us as parents, as aunts, as uncles, even as children, as adult children within these families, to be able to say, can we talk? Can we talk about what we're encountering, about what we're concerned about what we're proud of, about when we want the earth to open up and swallow us, whatever it is? Can we just talk?
I think of the projection onto people with wealth and the projection onto business owners. And what I used to be a business appraiser. And the assumption, the money script that I ran into so often was, well, if you're in business, you have money. Just like if you're a landlord. If you're a landlord, you have money. In the US, just about 50%, give or take a little bit, of the housing stock in the US is owned by ma and pa. 1 or 2 units, 50% of the housing stock. Where the projection is, it's large corporations,
right,
that own this. And all of the projections that can go on that. And of course, I work on the other side. I see the books. I know what those businesses aren't worth. It is so often that a small business owner could make more working for someone else. And the same with the mom and pop rentals. They have mortgages, and
Sure.
most of them are not paid off, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was part of something we called ourselves the Pioneers, and it was 8 or 10 of us around 2000 that started playing around with this idea of emotions and money, um, in the George Kinder era, and we had a day where we took 8 hours. At that time, there was 8 of us, and we gave everybody 1 hour to tell everybody how much they made a year and what they were worth. Now that's personal,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the money we don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember how emotionally charged that day was. And we were all very courageous. Like, if we're going to play in this sandbox, maybe we need to face this stuff within ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And so what did you notice was coming out in that disclosure?
Oh my God, there was fear, panic, shame, lots of shame, right? The thought of I earn less than anybody in this room. I'm worth less than anybody in this room.
Yeah.
Projections that, well, this particular person, is making a lot more. And I think we had some facilitation going on with this, if I remember right.
Probably a good idea.
And it was financially undressing, right?
Yeah.
One of the major fears why people don't hire a financial planner is sharing all this, because this is the most shameful stuff there is to share.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when we started the on-site workshops, when I was working with Ted Klontz, and one of the very first ones, we're walking back from the group room, and he said, Rick, there's more shame in that room than any program, any workshop I've ever done. I said, but Ted, you're a level 3 sexual addiction counselor. You mean except for those programs, right? And in his famous style, there's more shame in that room than any workshop I've ever done. So to really experience that, and at the end of the day, it was so hilarious that all of us earned just about the same, and all of us were worth just about the same. So that was pretty powerful to experience that, and to just the projections that I make. So I just say that with business owners, that there are, I don't know what percent of business owners are really have hit it, who are really successful. Most of them are not.
Well, I'm so sensitive to the language now, right? About things like you should get paid what you're worth. Like that drives me crazy. You should get paid market value. Maybe that's a better language, right?
Yeah, what you are worth. Yeah,
exactly. You are priceless, but how about your skill set?
Yes.
Right? Or is it true that the business isn't successful if it's not making a lot of money? Is that true? Right? But the point is that we need to be able to surface these assumptions and say, what counts as success for you? What are you going for? If what you're going for is that there's nobody that you have to call boss man, and you're successful, right?
Exactly.
If what you're concerned about is that you're worth less than Elon Musk, then watch your comparison group, because probably that means you'll never be successful. It's Yeah. So I think in families we've got this wonderful opportunity to be having these rich values-based discussions. Another Dick Wagnerism is that money is not values neutral. It is values rich. It is values rich. And and so to be talking with your kids about, this choice of post-secondary studies that you want to take. Tell me what have you looked into what kind of earning it will give you? Does that
Mhm.
matter to you? How will you make it work? Um, and what if you become surprisingly successful financially in this line of work? What would that mean for you? And how would that change your life? Or in what ways do you want to keep it the same? I did a seminar with some business owners in Jordan this morning, and they were talking about how hard it is in their culture to talk to the older generation who need to be starting the business transition and the wealth
Mhm.
transition,
Mhm.
but it's just, culturally that's not done. Well, it's kind of like saying culturally we don't believe in gravity. It's kind of like,
Right. Well,
gravity's still going to have its way with you. So we might not want to talk about gravity, but boy, how do we start to have these conversations that are still respectful and appropriate,
yeah.
but that recognize the single biggest predictor to the success of business transfer is preparation of the heirs. Period. Right? It just
Yeah.
doesn't.
It's huge. Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm grappling with myself is succession planning.
Mm-hmm.
And what if another person asks me, what is it you want, Rick? I mean, if I have $100 for every time, but what do you want? And starting um, that can be so scripted. That can be so guided by money scripts and what I should want, what I ought to
Mm-hmm.
want, what society says I should want. And that can be, I used to say early in therapy, group therapy, I really hated if I did some work and then the therapist turns to me and says, "So, what do you need?" I'm just like, I finally said one day, "Would you invent a what do I need pill?" Because it's just a whiteout, right? Needs. What are those? And it's
So what about
such
that? Does it feel like you're having to auto-diagnose and come up with like the correct answer? Or what is it that makes that question?
some sometimes I have been talking about this a lot recently that I work best off a dirty page. And that's how I write. I sat down to write a book, and an hour later, the page was still blank.
Hmm.
Like, where do I start? Now, at that time, I was writing 1,200 words a week for a column. I know what it is to write 1,200 words, but we're talking about 90,000. This is overwhelming.
Hmm.
And it meant something different to me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing with succession planning. In fact, I'm in the middle of hiring a consultant for that. And I got very clear what I need. Tell me what other kids do. Have you heard of Love and Logic?
Uh-huh.
Of course you have. And it's like, well, don't tell your kid what to do. Give them two choices that you love, right? And oh, well, here's what some other kids have done. So I've kind of did the same thing. Well, tell me what some other kids have done on succession planning. It's like, to a degree, I don't know what I don't know.
For sure.
And when I see options, I can go, that is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. No way would I want to do that. But that opens a door to considering this might make sense or
Mm-hmm.
this might make sense. And so just personally, I got really clear that I need to hear some options. I need a dirty page to go, oh, that's an option. One of my partners came up with an option. I'm like, oh, I didn't know. He says, why don't we do this the way law firms do? And you'll just become emeritus and you can get dividends from the company and you can go play solitaire 20 hours a week. I said, you know what? I like everything about that except the solitaire. There's no way am I going to play solitaire. So, so I hear the difficulty, especially when there's a taboo in a society about talking about this. And I wonder to what degree that same taboo operates in families in Canada and in the United States.
Yeah. I think it's there hugely. But just like you're bringing in a consultant to help with this, there are ways that families can get help with these discussions. There are business groups of colleagues. There are consultants who help with these discussions, and there are financial planners who can even just get things going. I often find it really helpful to ask the question in a couple of different ways, both promotion focused and prevention focused. So what am I trying to protect? What am I trying to protect against? In particular, that one, right? What do I want to avoid happening at all costs? And then what awesome thing do I want to experience as a result of this event? And sometimes, depending on the circumstance, it is much easier for me to answer one question versus the other. Most entrepreneurs are by nature highly promotion oriented. You think about Richard Branson, right? Like just virgin everything. He can come up with a business idea at the drop of a hat. And then you think about C. Everett Koop, the former Surgeon General. He's more of a prevention focused guy. He's going to have warnings on things about the Surgeon General tells you. And most of us are somewhere in between. When it comes to parenting, I often think it was so different being a teenager on a Friday night than it was being the parent of a teenager on a Friday night. I was very promotion focused as a teen and very prevention focused as a parent. So sometimes asking those questions in different ways allows you to surface different kinds of hopes and fears.
I love your questions, and that is why you are so good. Moira, we're going to have to leave it there. I didn't even get into, I really like, how do you learn to trust advisors? Because I see that is a big thing with people with money that can actually destroy them when they select the wrong one, but we can't.
It's interesting you should say that. That just feels like a little gift from God, because I think my next book is going to be about predators in the financial domain.
Oh, nice. Sign me up on the pre-copy list. Moira, thank you so much for being with us, and tell us again where folks can find you.
They can, the advisors on the call, the financial professionals on the call might be interested in my book, which is called Advice That Sticks. And my website is moneymindandmeaning.com. Great.
Thank you so much for your time and all of your wisdom. It's just been delightful.
It was so nice to spend time with you, Rick. Take care.
Take care.